Hello everyone, it has been a little over 6 years since I originally injured my foot, a Lisfranc injury or a Lisfranc dislocation back in October of 2018, and a few months since my surgery to correct my injury, a midfoot fusion and bone graft back on July 30th of 2024. So I wanted to make a video about some of the things that I have learned along the way. My recovery from the surgery has been a bit more painful and difficult than I thought it would be, and a full fusion of the bones has been taking a bit longer than expected, so I have definitely been learning a lot over these past 6 years. The first thing I learned after the surgery, and the biggest struggle that I had, was being dependent on others for help and support, and that was completely dependent, especially during the first few weeks. I needed to ask for a lot of help, and I needed to learn to accept that my family was doing almost everything for me during the first 7 weeks after the surgery when I was non-weight bearing. I needed to remind myself to be happy that I had the help and the support rather than allow myself to grow resentful of the condition that had led to my being dependent, because that was not going to be helpful to the situation, and I am in a very fortunate position to have such a strong support system. This was the first time I have needed such intensive care for such an extended period of time, which leads me to the next two things I have been working on learning: patience and accepting what my limits are. There is a huge difference between what I can do by myself and what I should do by myself. There were a lot of things I could have pushed myself to do, but it would have exhausted me and most likely prolonged my recovery. Since I do not have children and my job was giving me FMLA, there was no reason to be pushing myself beyond what was medically being required of me to be doing to recover. I had to continually remind myself to take things one day at a time and to just recover at my own pace, no matter how discouraged or impatient I was feeling, because my injury and my limitations from the surgery were a temporary situation. Since I am someone who enjoys going out of the house to take walks, go to the gym, and find activities to do with my friends and family, not being able to do these things like I could before the injury was truly frustrating and at times isolating. When I thought I was ready to start the gym with my husband for light exercise and got clearance from the surgeon to give it a try, I quickly realized that it was too soon in the recovery to go as often as I had wanted to, and had to reevaluate what my actual limitations were versus what my expectations had been prior to the surgery, and be more patient with myself. I had to learn what my foot's tolerance for activity was by taking very small trips out of the house with my family and my husband, and use my mobility aids such as the iWalk and the knee scooter for short trips, but I would often pay for accidentally doing too much by having intense pain for 1 to 2 days afterwards. This was something I struggled with because all I wanted to do was recover as quickly as possible so I could be active, but to recover I needed to be patient and give my foot the chance to heal enough before being active. I learned the hard way to slow down and be patient. Thankfully, my friends and family visited me and did their best to include me in the things that were either at their homes or at places where I could have my foot elevated, so that when I was ready to leave the house more, I didn't have to feel so alone. I learned that it's okay to be discouraged and to have a really bad day. I had been dealing with this injury for 5 years and 8 months prior to having the surgery and had tried non-surgical interventions before, such as physical therapy, so I was used to having an injured foot, and I knew that the recovery from the surgery was going to be long and not easy, even though I wasn't fully prepared for the recovery. However, I think Chris Traeger from Parks and Rec said it best: I don't like to feel bad, I like to feel good. Although the discouragement, frustration, impatience, and very deep depression that came with the slow progress and the dependence on others, since it was my driving foot that was affected, was very real, and I learned to take it one day at a time, and my husband and my family helped me a lot with that. Something else that I realized as I was editing was having to pull out old mobility aids that I thought I was done with, having to occasionally go back to the knee scooter because my foot would get too painful at the end of the day to even think of putting weight on it, or never being fully off the crutches for more than a few days at a time because I would often need at least one at the end of the day, or would need to take one with me when I would leave the house just in case, and that would really become mentally exhausting. This is of course not to say that I was not thankful for all of these mobility aids. Of course, having all of these made my recovery much easier, and I don't know where I would have been without them. But as somebody who is not used to having a recovery that was so long, and not used to having to think about taking all of these things with me every time I leave the house, going from somebody who was 90% mobile to almost not mobile so quickly, it was something that was just very mentally draining and just a very big learning curve for me. I learned to keep my sense of humor and to keep finding small ways to have fun despite my life being so completely different for the time being. I raced around on my knee scooter as soon as I was well enough to move around on my own, to my husband and my family's dismay. They very often asked me not to do sweet ramps down the stairs with the scooter. I told them I couldn't make that promise. It wasn't easy keeping a sense of humor, but I did my best. I figured that it would not do any good to be miserable, that I would just do my best to have the most good days possible. My family really helped me keep my sense of humor. You're asking if I need help?
Yeah.
Well, that depends.
On what?
Well, I have a book here in my motor vehicle, as you can tell.
I can see that.
And I was thinking of doing a sweet ramp off our porch and then going up on the roof with my book and then doing a sweet ramp off the roof as I read my book.
Well, how are you going to get onto the roof?
I hadn't figured that part yet, and that's where I need your help.
I see. I guess what we'll do is we'll put a sweet ramp on top of the cars. And they'll gather a bunch of speed. Hit the roof. You'll want to do a forward flip for style points. Then when you land on it, you want to Tokyo drift to a stop.
This is why you're my husband. Thank you.
And then once you're on the roof, you probably want to use the brakes so you don't slide off accidentally.
Sounds good.
Because, safety.
Okay. Shall we go out now and try that out?
Why not?
At the end of the day, having any type of surgery can be a rough time. If you've made it this far in the video, feel free to share your surgery stories and your struggles, your victories, what you've learned below in the comments. I would love to hear from you.